We will start with land use hearings at 10:05. County Manager, if you could start us off with the first case.
Sorry, just one moment. Okay, our first case today is RCU 2015-2, Denver Mart Cannabis Cup. Chris LaRue, I get that right, with our planning department is here to talk through the case.
Okay, thank you. This is the Denver Mart Cannabis Cup. It's case number RCU 2015-2. This is a request for a conditional use permit to allow a multi-day cannabis-related festival. Here's the site in the surrounding area. Here's 58th Avenue. Here's I-25 to the west. Here's Washington Street to the east. And this is the Denver Merchandise Mart property. So the Denver Mart, it's a wholesale market center, and again, it's on approximately 27.8 acres in urban southwest Adams County. It's bounded by I-25 to the west, Washington to the east, 58th to the south, and there are railroad tracks to the north. Per section 49217 of the Adams County Development Standards, the proposed use would be classified as outdoor commercial recreation. This type of use requires a conditional use permit prior to being allowed on a property in the I-2 zone. The Denver Mart proposes to host an indoor and outdoor cannabis culture festival this month. Specifically, the name of the event is the High Times Cannabis Cup. It'll be taking place in the Mart's interior space as well as some of the exterior parking lots. And they describe it as a multifaceted 3-day trade show event. It has seminars on cannabis-related businesses, activism, cultivation, and legalities. There are vendor exhibitions, there's food, and there would be an evening music concert for the VIP ticket holders. So the show schedule and hours are proposed to be on 4/16 and 17. There would be load and set up from 8 to 10 p.m. The actual event starts on 4/18. Their doors open to the public from noon to 7 p.m. And then there's the concert from 8 to 12 for ticket holders for that event. Then the event occurs on 4/19. Again, it's open to vendors from 9 to 11, and then the public from 12 p.m. to 9 p.m. And then on 4/20, again, it's open to vendors from 9 a.m. to 11, and then open to the public from 12 p.m. to 9 p.m. And then the 21st is a breakdown and load-out day, and that occurs during normal business hours, 8 to 5. They're proposing that ticket prices would be $40 at the door. A person could purchase a 2-day pass online for $60. They're anticipating 25 to 30,000 plus people during the course of the 3-day event. There could be as many as 1,800 VIP ticket holders that would attend the concert. And so they're projecting 3,000 to 4,000 people on Friday, 8 to 12 on Saturday, 4 to 6 on Sunday, 8 to 10 on Monday. So majority of the traffic exits off of I-25 at 58th Avenue, and it will head to multiple parking lots that they have available. Traffic would be met by flaggers and signage to direct people to these various lots. They'd identified key issues during a similar event a year ago, was moving people from I-25 and into the surrounding parking areas. There were a lot of backups during that time. It backed up at 58th and Logan Street, 58th and Logan Court, and the intersection of 58th and Washington. So the applicant states they'll rent 4 construction-type orange electronic signs to direct drivers to parking areas. 2 will be placed along I-25 north and southbound at the exit ramps, and the other 2 would be used along 58th Avenue, again giving directions to parking. At the intersection of 58th and Washington, traffic would be split into 3 directions: north on Washington, south on Washington, or east on 58th. Mart staff would divert traffic away from the Mart to proposed outlying parking lots. I do have a map of those in a moment. Parking along 58th and east and west, as well as Washington Street north and south, will be designated as no parking. They would tow vehicles that are parked in those locations. They're estimating 3 people per car with roughly 30,000 plus attendees. They're estimating 10 to 12,000 vehicles needing parking during the 4-day period, and Saturday being the peak. And they intend to rent 4 outlying lots. There'd be 1 lot east of the Mart, 1 north, and 2 to the south. They'll provide shuttle service to all 4 lots and have estimated 8 buses, 8 vans to accommodate crowds. The MART provides third-party security that would provide security in the interior and exterior event space, as well as parking lots, the perimeter of the MART area. The security staff's responsible for identifying wristbands. They rove the crowd, they monitor bar areas, they look for safety violations. All of the security personnel are uniform. They'll also be augmented by what they call event ushers. They're posted at inside and outside locations. They wear T-shirts, I think, that say staff. They'll report any incidents or potential incidents to the uniformed security personnel. They'd have full-time dedicated staff with EMT paramedics. There'd be an on-site medical station access throughout the event for vehicles. They did have a neighborhood meeting previously this year to share information about the event. They had one person that attend. They had concerns with trash pickup, parking, and security. The applicant stated they provided that attendee information regarding those concerns and that he seemed satisfied with those provisions. They had reported they'd received one email from an individual who did not have any concerns when they sent out their neighborhood invites. We didn't receive any citizen comments during the referral. We had received a letter from someone that just had some general concerns. We received comments from Transportation, Excel Energy, Tri-County, the State Patrol, and CDOT, that they'll have to follow. All of those relevant comments are included in the findings, the recommended conditions. The Planning Commission heard this case on March 26th. They recommended approval with a 6-to-1 vote. Commissioner Moscow was the dissenting vote. The applicant stated they put a lot of effort to ensure safety for the event. It was stated the applicant had communicated their safety plan with the State Patrol and the Sheriff's Office, and the MART's paying to have representatives from both of those agencies at the event. And we did not have any citizen testimony during that hearing. So here's the site plan. Here's 58th Avenue, and here is Washington here to the east. This bolded area is basically the outdoor event area, and then they'll use some of the indoor spaces for the MART facility as well. Here's just a color picture that basically shows the outdoor area, some of the booths and areas that they would have. The event area is surrounded by a red fence, or at least it's red on the site plan. Here is the outline parking areas then. Here's the MART area in this purple. You can see these lots are labeled, they're green, and they show where additional parking space would occur. Some are in unincorporated, they require temporary use permits. We'd noted that in the staff report. There's the aerial of the site. There's the MART. Here's 58th, I-25 in Washington. And again, the area they intend to use is what I'm highlighting here with the mouse. This is looking south on Washington, back towards 58th where the traffic signal is. Here's looking north. This is the site facing west from Washington. That's looking west as well, back towards the main part of the MART. It's kind of the same view. That's looking west, then looking at the event area that we saw in the site plan. That's facing west again, but moving further along the property. This is Interstate 25 that you're seeing. It's a more direct view. There's their freestanding sign. And that's looking back south towards the MART facility. Just another view then. That's looking over towards Logan Court. So the Planning Commission and staff are recommending approval. That includes 8 findings. There are 2 conditions precedent, 15 conditions, and 3 notes. That concludes the report.
Thank you very much. Commissioners, do you have any questions for staff? Commissioner O'Dorisio.
I do. This morning, there was an article in the Colorado Public Radio regarding a letter that came out from the Enforcement Division at the state regarding off-premises events such as this relating to marijuana. Do we have a copy of that letter that was submitted by the state enforcement agency?
Yes, we do. I can hand those out.
Will this be considered part of the public record, please?
I guess I'm not sure how you would like this marked. Is this a commissioner exhibit? Is this, I mean, I
I'm-
think
don't
we can
believe
just
I'm
include it
not a
as part of the
I don't
staff
believe
report.
I don't believe I'm a fact finder, but I did want to ask about this because it was brought up this morning on Colorado Public Radio. And I would suggest that it would be a staff exhibit or an additional piece of information provided by staff to the commissioners.
Sure, we'll include it as part of the staff packet.
Thank you. And if we could give folks some,
It wasn't sent to us?
no, it was not.
So it wasn't part of like the public testimony or anything like this? This is just you that want us to see it?
I asked staff if this would, I told staff that I would ask about this, but I
Okay.
did not have any other communications. We're not allowed to communicate about these cases.
Yeah, yeah.
But I did want to ask about it because it was in the news, and it was something that was released. And I believe it's not a bad idea for us to understand the broader context.
Okay.
Well, let me ask this. Is there anyone from staff that would like to give us any comments on this?
Commissioner, I'd be happy to, Val Montoya, Planning and Development Department. The letter we're discussing is dated April 3rd, 2015. It's an industry-wide bulletin that has been released from the Marijuana Enforcement Division in the Colorado Department of Revenue. And what it does is it provides guidance for licensee participation in off-premise cannabis events, trade shows, and festivals. Basically, what it says is that in order to sell marijuana in the state, number one, you have to have a license, and those activities cannot occur off-premise. There are some allowances for the transport of marijuana items. However, they cannot be transported to non-licensed premises. And as of note, the mart is not a licensed premise, and that there is no prohibition on patient or customer use of marijuana as long as it's in accordance with state statutes. The applicant has discussed this matter with their attorney. I think they'd be happy to discuss their findings when it's appropriate for them to talk. The MED, which is short for the the Marijuana Enforcement Division, does state that it is okay to distribute coupons, display graphics, or hand out printed materials of marijuana-related items. However, marijuana cannot be for display or sale at the facility. Lastly, the state encourages that any booth or exhibit table should be located away from and separated from any area designated for consumption of marijuana. And in short, that is basically what the bulletin describes.
Thank you very much. County Attorney, I think that probably should be an exhibit because it did come from one of the commissioners through staff. How would you like to handle that?
Sure, we can mark it as Staff Exhibit 1 if you'd like us to.
Okay, then let's do that.
Okay.
Okay, and we can make that available online also for
Yes,
later,
the
for
planning-
later viewing?
Planning staff usually incorporates those into their packets. online.
Okay. Commissioners, do we have any other questions for staff? At this time, could I ask the applicant to step forward? Please state your name and address for the record.
Good morning, Commissioners. My name's Ken Williams. I'm the Director of Event Sales and Operations at the Denver Mart. Address is 451 East 58th Avenue. That's in Denver, 80216. I guess I'd just elaborate a little bit on what's been presented by staff. And I'll start with the letter that we were just talking about. I had a meeting with the MED on Friday of last week, so we've discussed this issue, and the show management staff is aware of it, the security staff is aware of it. The MED has already told us that they'll have at least 2 officers at the event every day of the event, doing nothing but looking for this particular issue, any problems with this. They have an exhibitor list in advance, so they're going to contact the dispensaries ahead of time and let them know, we're watching you, we're going to be there, make sure you do it right. So The letter definitely has some application to our event, and our event may have actually prompted some of this, just in the fact that we've done or have held a number of marijuana-related events. So I'm sure that we had some part in this, but we have addressed those needs or those issues and have a plan to take care of those. So just to elaborate a little bit again on some of the safety, security, and traffic control plan, we do have, we've hired a firm, LSC Transportation Consultants. They did put an official traffic control plan together for us. I just received the final copy of that on Friday. I've not sent it to the planning department. I will have that to them today. But essentially what that document states is that we will have the Adams County Sheriff's Department and the Colorado State Patrol will be involved. And as was discussed, the big issue we had last year was getting traffic off of I-25 into the area where we're located, into the parking lots. The State Patrol is going to will handle the lights on the off-ramps, northbound and southbound I-25, so they have control of the lights and they're going to direct traffic. We're going to divvy traffic up into vendor parking in one area, VIP and general admission parking go to a different lane, and we'll send them on their way in the direction they're supposed to go. Once they get past that point, the Adams County Sheriff's Department will pick them up at 58th and Logan Court, and then 58th and Washington at that intersection. So again, the idea is just to keep traffic flowing down 58th to those outlying parking lots. Once they are through Washington, they'll go to what we're calling our Lot C. Once that lot is filled, we'll send them to Lot D. Once that lot is filled, we're going to actually send them down to, we are using the Coliseum parking lot as our third option for parking. They've got about 2,500 spaces. The other two lots that we have about 2,500 spaces. So when I add those with what we have on our main property, we're at about 6,500 total parking spaces for each day. So we should have plenty of parking. Shuttle buses to and from each of those parking lots. We actually have, I think in the report it states 8 buses. We actually now have 22 buses, 3 ADA vans, and I guess that would be it, some sedans if we need them for special transportation. So we had a planning meeting last week. The fire department was there, Adams County Sheriff, the State Patrol, the private security, our in-house security, and then our staff. We went through this traffic control plan. We fine-tuned a couple of things since that meeting, and that's what's included in that final plan. Commander Van Zant at the Sheriff's Department has his copy. Captain Prater at the State Patrol has his copy. Fire Marshal Preston at the Fire Department has his copy, and so forth. So we've gone through some pretty extensive planning, at least in terms of that traffic control. Then we had a second meeting, a conference call yesterday with a lot of those same parties, and then we threw in the EMT and paramedic group as well. They'll actually have 3 ambulances on site with each one with a crew of 3 people. So we'll have 9 EMTs on site with 3 ambulances for transportation. We have an indoor medical area, treatment area where they'll be sectioned off, draped, private space so that EMTs can check people out on site. And then the ambulances are spread through, the 3 ambulances through locations through the event to get to wherever they need to as quickly as possible. Let's see. I think one thing I do want to clarify is we are the event facility, so we rent the space. We don't actually have anything to do with setting pricing, selling exhibit space, rules and regulations with the exhibitors, things like that. That's all the show promoter that does all that. We provide the space. Now, that said, we do consult with them, obviously, on the traffic issues and some of the legal issues and things like that. We have to, live here 365. They're only here for 10 days during the show, so we make sure they do it right. I guess at this point, that's the majority of what I had to say. If there's any questions, I'll answer those.
Commissioners, do we have any questions? Commissioner O'Dorisio.
I have questions on 3 topics. The first one is consumption, second one would be distribution, and the third would be just general overall compliance with the law.
Okay.
Let's start with the first one. It's my understanding there are recreation areas where people will be able to consume on premises, correct?
That's correct.
How is that not a violation of state law, which explicitly prohibits consumption in public areas?
Well, that's the two things. One, we're private property, so it's be like me smoking at my house with my friends. And then two, we have to keep it out of the public view. So the red fence was mentioned. Mr. LaRue mentioned that earlier. We have fence that surrounds the entire location, and then there's a blackout scrim that's put on that fence. So it's not within the public view, and it's on private property. So that's how we are able to do that.
And so are there marijuana smoking bars allowed in Colorado?
That I don't know.
What I'm wondering is if
places,
this
but
is,
I don't know.
what I'm wondering if this is really a private event or a public event?
Well, according to our attorney, it's a private event.
Okay. The second question I have is about distribution. If you look on any Google and you look up any prior cannabis cups, you see booths lined up with samples and people actually smoking from the actual booths themselves. This letter clearly states that there shall be no distribution from such booths, or even that marijuana be located at such booths. Would you agree with that?
I agree with that, yes.
So would you be willing to require that every booth member sign acknowledgement of receipt of this letter and compliance with this letter, and then store that information as part of a condition to approve this particular license or the permit?
Yes, I'd be happy to. And in fact, I'm sure I can get copies from the MED because I know they've already started that process of making sure that that letter is in the hands of the right people.
So I will be asking to add a condition. And you said you'd be okay with that if I were to recommend adding a condition.
Absolutely, yes.
That was my question, is if he would be okay with adding that condition.
Yes.
That's all for now.
Actually, Commissioner O'Dorisio, in response to your questions about public events, there's been a couple that have been held pretty widely known. One of them was the Denver Art Museum held an event where they had marijuana smoking in it. And also the Colorado Symphony had a concert for people to allow to smoke. So you're allowed to smoke in an event because it's considered a private event. Even though it's open to the public, it's still considered it's the event people. So that's an answer in regards to that.
Any other questions from staff or from the commissioners? I'm sorry. Commissioner O'Dorisio, did you have any other questions you wanted to ask?
My third concern was just general overall compliance with state law. I understand that we're moving into an area where there might be some challenges between federal and state law. It's clearly that the voters of this state support the decriminalization and expansion of rights when it comes to cannabis and the consumption of marijuana. We have to just be able to make sure that we're showing that we can do this in a very an orderly, methodical fashion and do it professionally. So I don't think it was a mistake or a coincidence that this letter came out from the Colorado Department of Revenue a week before. There's a decision based on the Cannabis Cup. And so with that, I'm going to be asking that we add an amendment or we add a condition, and you said you'd be okay with that, to require every participant, vendor in this event to acknowledge receipt of the letter and to sign that they will comply with it. And if you guys are willing to add that condition, I'd be willing to support approval with that additional condition.
Okay. Can I clarify one thing on that?
Absolutely.
This letter applies to dispensaries, not to, if I'm a T-shirt guy selling T-shirts, it wouldn't apply to me necessarily. It's to the dispensaries that actually sell marijuana. They have to sell it in their licensed property. They can't take it from there to a trade show space and then sell it. So as far as the letter going to every vendor, I mean, we're probably talking 500 or 600 vendors. The MED, I know, is specifically going to the dispensaries with this letter. So is that condition asking for all 500 or 600 vendors or just those dispensaries?
I think it makes sense that maybe I'm jumping ahead. Then am I assuming that in the past, the only people who actually brought marijuana to the event were those that were licensed vendors?
Licensed dispensaries or vendors in general?
I think the bottom line is we don't want to have an illegal distribution of marijuana at this event.
I absolutely agree with that, and that's why the MED will be on site to enforce those rules and regulations.
Okay.
That will be their role on site.
So then maybe the requirement would be that there will be no distribution of marijuana from any vendor, period.
Okay? Sure.
That would include samples, et cetera.
Okay.
Would you be okay with that?
Absolutely.
Okay. Thank you.
Commissioners, any other questions for the applicant? No? Yes? Okay, thank you, sir. Appreciate
you.
your time.
Thank you.
Stay
Commissioners.
close. You may be needed again. At this time, I'd like to ask if there's anyone in the audience that would like to make public comment on this.
Let's do some number 13.
Anyone in the audience? Seeing none. Commissioners, do we have a, I know that you said you wanted to make a,
I do. Mr.
Commissioner
Chair,
Mauricio.
I would ask that in case RCU 2015-00002 Denver Mart Cannabis Cup move for approval with 8 findings of fact, 2 conditions precedent, 15 conditions and 3 notes with a modification or amendment to condition number 13 that currently reads the sale of marijuana shall be prohibited, that 13 now state that the sale or distribution of marijuana
Here,
be prohibited.
I have some language prepared that we could include. So 13 would say, sale of marijuana shall be prohibited, period. Then there'd be a second sentence with that that would say, it is unlawful for a person to buy, sell, transfer, give away, or acquire medical marijuana, retail marijuana products except as allowed pursuant to Colorado Department of Revenue requirements and state statute.
Are you
I
okay
like
with
that.
Commissioner?
I actually
Mauricio?
like that much better because it incorporates by reference the other rules.
And then I also had some language to suggest for the acknowledging this bulletin. I can read that too if you like. We're suggesting that that would be condition precedent number 3. And it would say the applicant shall require each marijuana establishment to acknowledge receipt of the April 3rd, 2015 industry-wide bulletin from the Colorado Department of Revenue regarding licensee participation in off-premise cannabis events, trade shows, and festivals. And then we just want to make sure that they comply with the requirements that are in there.
Very good job, Mr. Luke. I think that would
I would
adequately
like a
address my concerns.
clarification on that. And that is that, it was brought up earlier that, the letter goes towards licensed establishments for marijuana establishments. Are we talking, does that language require just those, or does it require as the,
So we're just
Applicant
referring to
stated.
marijuana establishments, so it would cover licensed or non, whatever, what have you,
Hopefully they're licensed.
or not licensed, but it should cover all of them.
so again, you're confusing me now. I'm slow today. Is that going to be a requirement for all 500 of the vendors?
Only the marijuana establishments, and those are
Okay.
defined in our regulations, that marijuana establishment's a term that we had adopted with those regulations.
Commissioner Odoricio?
I would be fine with that. I think that your amendment to condition 13, the first sentence would be to prohibit the sale, and the second says it's illegal under certain circumstances, but we're not going to prohibit the distribution. Rather, it sounds like we're just referring to applicable law. Is that correct?
May I read it again? It would state, it's unlawful for a person to buy, sell, transfer, give away, or acquire medical marijuana, or retail marijuana products, except as allowed pursuant to Articles of Section 16 of the state constitution and the MED bulletin dated April 3rd, 2015. So that would cover all manner of marijuana transfer that could be associated with this trade show.
And would it be a violation if the applicant were to allow that to occur during this event?
It would be a violation of both our condition and state law if they were not in accordance with your conditions or the laws of the state.
Commissioner, I would just say that I don't think we should be in the business of determining what is legal under the criminal statutes. That would be a determination
Right.
for the district attorney's office. And I don't think that we should be making that determination in this land use hearing. I'm fine with referencing state law and then leaving it to the applicant and law enforcement to determine whether there are legal violations.
We could also establish just a general condition that there shall be no distribution, giving away, transfer, sale, or acquiring of such products at this event too, though.
You could. My concern would be, are you going beyond the land use case that's before you? And so I would want to make sure that that condition is actually tied to the land use case, and I think probably application of state law accomplishes your goal without putting
Right.
us in that position.
So can I have an opinion from the county attorney as to the amendments that we've made? Are you okay with the amendments that we've made as they're written?
Yes, as read by the planning staff, I have no concerns about those amendments.
Okay. And Commissioner Mauricio, are you okay with the amendment as it was written and read back to you?
Yes.
Other commissioners, any issues? So could we vote on the amendment first? And do we need the amendment first, or can we do it all at one? So we'll include that in, are you making a motion with that amendment to,
Making an emotion with the amendment to condition 13 and the additional condition precedent.
And I second.
Commissioner Odericio,
Yes.
Commissioner Henry,
Yes.
Commissioner Pulowski, Commissioner Hanson,
no?
Commissioner Tedesco.
Yes. Thank you very much. And that concludes our land use cases for today, am I correct? Yes, we are adjourned.